I guess for me, food, faith, and love are so intertwined. I asked my mom this weekend what she thinks when she cooks, and she's like, every time I cook, I think about you and your brother sitting down and eating and growing, and in every intention and everything I do is just, I fill it with love because I want that love to translate to you. And she learned that from her mother. I remember my grandmother in the mornings during Ramadan waking up in early in the morning to make it and to make the kisra and to have that ready so that people, like for their fatur, when they break their fast, they have that ready. But I remember it in every day in the morning, just every day in Sudan. My grandma would be up at like before the sunrise. She would be sitting there. She would be making that food. She would be telling us stories. She'd be like, "Go collect some eggs." I was afraid of the chickens that we kept, so for me, those memories do keep me warm, and that's why that's my comfort food. But because I grew up surrounded by love, grew up surrounded by this love and this unshakable joy, and even though our country was in the middle of war, even though our family was like besieged basically, I never felt afraid because in my family I knew like undeniably that I was loved, that my brothers were loved, that we were safe, even though our house was raided, even though the government would take away my father, my uncles, my mom had to go and get them, or my aunts, people disappeared, people we knew died. It's still, there was so much love, not just in our family, but in our street, in our neighborhood. Sudanese people, I think, are built on love. That's why in Arabic we're called al Shab al Tayyib, the kind people, because like our country is just built on people doing everyday kindness for each other, helping each other out. And I'm just so happy that this is a culture that I come from, a culture where you're taught to love unconditionally. And the the thing is, for me, faith was always a bit hard because when I was younger, I didn't question anything, but at the same time, my teachers, in when they tell you these small stories to start you into religion, they tell you the scary parts first. They tell you the sins and apocalypse and the end of the days, and they teach you to fear God before they teach you to love Him, to love them. And so for a long time, I felt that I only held on to my faith because I was afraid of what would happen without it. But then when I started learning, exploring it myself, reading, listening, talking to people, I I saw that I could find God in the everyday, in just these like small moments where I could find my faith and I could find myself through my faith, and that's a part of my identity that I never have to let go. But I get to decide it on my terms. It's not on anyone else's terms. Like who I like, it's not on anyone else's terms how I see God, how I communicate with God, how I express my faith. And that was one of the most empowering moments for me because I could finally be myself and know that there's no right or wrong way to, like, there's no right or wrong way to be a person of faith. I went from fear to faith, and that's what I try to do because the world is a scary place. And for me, I exist as a woman, as a Muslim, as black. I'm a minority within a minority within a minority. And I should be constantly terrified, but I'm not anymore because I try and see every opportunity as I try and see every one of my failures as a new possibility, and I try and see every one of them as an opportunity to learn. And I think that and that's why I try and see God in small places, in places where before I would have ignored. I want to see the magical in the mundane, if that makes sense. I try and like look at the trees and think, well, if they're still here despite everything, then why can't I be here? I see my brothers laughing, and I think how much of a miracle is that through everything we're surviving, we're laughing. I see in young children like in playgrounds, and I'm just like, the fact that we've gone through everything we've gone through, we've created families, we've created communities, and that sense of love is still here, even like across an ocean and years. My people are still here, we're still surviving, we're still thriving, and we will be. That gives me hope, that encourages my faith. About a year since our arrival, my dad brought home some balloons, and I was incredibly homesick. Like those first few years, I had the same dream. Since the moment we left Sudan, I always had the same dream, just going to sleep and walking and turning a corner and then finding that familiar street to my grandparents' house, and then knocking on the door and opening the door and seeing my entire family there. That dream just kept recurring. It was there every night when I was in Egypt. It was there when we arrived. And I had really missed my family. So what I did was, when I had this little pink Quran with me all the time that I read from. It was tiny, it was hot pink. I was the bomb. I took it everywhere. And I read it at school, even though the other kids were just giving me these really strange looks. It was like, no, this is what keeps me grounded. But that day I woke up and I did my own little prayer, and Dad brought home these balloons for us to play with. And I started writing notes. And every time I wrote a note, I would blow up a balloon, tie it in a note, and those notes were letters to my aunt, so she could read them to my whole family. And I would release the balloon, and I had every conviction that those balloons, like those red balloons, were gonna go all the way to Sudan with my letters, and that my family were gonna get them. And that got me through that first year. Every day, that balloon, that letter, sending it to my aunt. And when I talk to her on the phone, I'm just like, did you get my notes? And she's like, yes, I got your notes. I'm just like, I knew it. I knew to get my notes. I think my parents might have low-key told her, like, what's going on? Just play along with it. And I remember those first few months, we didn't have Sudanese food. And I didn't understand Australian food. I did not like any of this. I was like, I want my grandmother's cooking. I want things to make sense. And then one day my mom made ملح الويكة تقلية, which is like with minced meat and okra and everything. And I ate it and I was just in tears, because I was like, this is home. Like, and home isn't us. Like, we were all sitting together, because my family, even now, dinner time is family time. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We're together. If my dad or my mom are away, they're Skyping in for dinner. So just all of us sitting there together, I realized this is home, and home isn't a place, it's the people you're around. And I could feel connected to everyone I've left and everyone that was there. And because we had people we'd invited over, our neighbors and everything, and that was really beautiful. I never thought of myself as just an individual. I've always thought of myself as part of a family, part of a community, part of a country. I can never get into thinking of just doing something for myself. It has to be for other people as well. So I guess that's where I find my faith. That's where I find my love.